My photo story is all about my trip to Indiana Comic-Con. It starts with hitting the streets, and as you're walking down the streets to get to the convention center, all you see is the streets lined with Indiana Comic-Con posters and banners hanging on the street lights. Now, I was kind of worried about going to Indiana Comic-Con in fear of being made fun of for being a nerd or a geek or whatever you want to call it, but it was actually a very interesting experience. It was cool to see people walking around. It's a world where fantasy worlds meet the real world, and every fantasy world meets each other. It was kind of neat, and here you can see the entrances to get in. It's just pillars of different kinds of comic book covers. To show how non-judgy Comic-Con really was there are hundreds of people waiting outside for lines and lines of food trucks, and in these lines you see people dressed in all kinds of crazy characters and different costumes and insane hairstyles, and no one bats an eye. It kind of turns downtown Indianapolis into a circus, but nobody judged, and it was a really great time. While we were walking across one of the crosswalks, it was interesting to see, looking down from the top, to be able to see, some of the Ghostbusters characters walking across the street like it's just another day and they're not in anything different. It was a neat experience to see how people interacted with each other. A big part of Comic-Con was cosplay, which was really interesting to me because I hadn't had that much experience with seeing it. I know my brother was really into it, and I kind of made fun of him for it, but when you get there and you see how much detail and talent people put into these costumes, it's truly amazing. There's so much detail in the Beast's face, and he walked around like an actual royal couple. It was pretty awesome. The cosplay there had no bounds. There's an 8-foot-tall Chewbacca, as you can see. His costume was handmade, and he was towering over everybody. He had stilts in his boots to help him be up that high, but he did it so gracefully you would never know. Another great thing that I realized about Comic-Con is even though there were certain characters that are played either male or female, there were groups of people that if they had an odd number of girls to guys or guys to girls and they were going as a group, this group here is pictured as going as the Stranger Things cast, and there's a character in the first season called Barb. She's played by a female, but here the dad was a trooper and he was playing Barb in a female role. He had glasses on, a big bra, a nice blouse, and his wife was going as a character Joyce, and his little girls were 11 and one was a box of Egos, and it was a really neat thing to see. I had mentioned earlier how awesome it was to see people interact with different groups of cosplay, and I was able to catch this moment of a guy totally geeking out over being able to take a picture of a group of cosplayers of one of his favorite video games. And as you can see, he was also not the only one excited to see them, and I was also not the only one that caught this awesome picture. It was really neat to be able to see people get excited about things that they loved and really enjoyed and that others had in common with them. That people put so much detail and hard work into these cosplay costumes. I had never really taken notice of it before, but being there and seeing these people assemble their costumes because they couldn't quite fit through doorways because this gentleman stood a whopping 9 feet tall. He spent a whole year creating his Groot costume from Guardians of the Galaxy. Each piece was hand-painted. The moss was hand-placed. It was really a neat process to see. And the little Jack skeleton in front of him, he also created her mask. That's his little girl. Here's another great example of how much work and effort people put into these. This Thanos character from the upcoming Avengers movie Infinity Wars, he stood 10 feet tall by the time his outfit was placed. We actually got to watch him assemble this one piece by piece too. There's actually stilts, and he's got boots that are built to his feet that fit inside of Thanos' actual boots. His neck where the character's neck is actually where the actual human's face is, so he can see through the holes, but Thanos' eyes light up, and his wife helped him put it together piece by piece. They actually had to get a ladder to put it all together, but it was really neat. He handcrafted that all by himself. And like I said, a lot of detail goes into this, and is a lot of talent that sometimes I think gets ignored or pushed off is weird. Cosplay was also something that I noticed didn't have to be super fancy or way out there. This gentleman just had a simple Fred Flintstone outfit on with his bowling championship hat, and he couldn't be more happy to walk around and take pictures with everybody. Not a whole lot of effort, but he had just as fun as the people who put a lot of talent into it. Another cool part of Comic-Con was to see that it wasn't just comic book characters, it was TV characters, pop culture icons, really anything that you could think of. Someone was there dressed like hit video game characters. This one was actually someone had taken an old semi-truck and turned it into the Transformers Optimus Prime. There was so much detail put into Optimus Prime that I had to take a picture of the back to kind of show you more. There were Transformers symbols on it, the chains are hanging, everything was neat and pristine, and it took them 2 years to be able to transform the old beat-up semi-truck that it originally started as to be into the Optimus Prime that you see now. Comic-Con just doesn't have cosplayers, it's got actual artists and actors that are there that you can meet and talk to, get autographs. Here happens to be Nolan North. He does the voice of Nathan Drake on the Uncharted series. And you can see someone dressed in a Fox cosplay waiting for him to meet him and get his signature. And there's a really awesome experience to be able to talk to someone. My sister-in-law stood in line to meet him, and I stood with her to be able to snap a couple pictures for her. But it was neat to be able to watch her interact with someone when she's played the whole Uncharted series. My brother stood in line for 2.5 hours to meet the famous Kevin Conroy, who does the voice of Batman on the animated series and a couple of the video games. He, if you know, maybe have seen the previews for Batman and Harley Quinn, that's Kevin Conroy. He does his voice. When Kevin got to the table, he actually climbed up on it and said an infamous Batman line. I personally don't know what it is. I didn't get to see it, but my brother did. I came a little too late. But it was a really neat experience to see him interact with his fans and get excited because they were excited. Comic-Con has a ton of vendors that you can go to, but what I didn't realize is how many artists there are that you can talk to and see and that are selling their artwork. Not only are they selling it, but a lot of them, like Tom Richmond here, who does artwork for Mad Magazine, which is a parody magazine if you haven't heard of that, was actually taking requests if you liked his artwork and there was a certain character or person that you wanted his type of picture from. He would sit there and draw it for you, and you could pick it up at the end of the day. And it was cool to be able to see people meet their artists or have other artists show like, hey, I learned how to draw from you, and I think that was a really neat experience.